welcome to the April 13, 2021 meeting of Manchester Town Council. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you. Pretty full agenda tonight, so we're going to try to move through some of the easier items pretty quickly. First order of business is approval of February 9th minutes. You should have a copy in your packet. I believe they were sent out electronically earlier. Are there any additions or questions, corrections to the minutes? Hearing that.
I'll second it.
Motion second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have two treasurers, one treasurer report. Take the February 21 treasurer's report. Your motion to receive the treasurer's report from 2021 February.
I'll make a motion that we receive the February 2021 Treasurer's Report. I'll second it.
Motion is second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then carrying through to the check registry, you have a check register for March with a treasurer's report to follow next month. We have a motion to receive the check register for March.
I'll make a motion we receive the March 2021 check register.
I'll second the motion.
Motion second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, Mayor's report. A number of things here. I'll get through some of the announcements first. As you may have noticed last week, yard waste pickup is back on. It has been moved to Wednesdays is at request of Hughes, which kind of helps to be more efficient. Maybe help you be more efficient too. You can bring your trash and yard waste down on the same days. Please separate them a little bit so that the guys picking them up kind of know what they're doing. Also, all yard waste should be placed in either the large craft type paper bags or in a container. Excuse me, to be dumped. So no plastic bags or trash bags, things like that, which obviously, aren't yard waste. Brush pickup, April 20th. So that's coming up next week already. A pile can't exceed 4 feet in height, 4 feet in width, 8 feet in length. Each property receives one pickup. So these would be trees and those sort of things that are damaged over the winter. Bulk trash pickup the following day, April 21st. Call Hughes to discuss your items and give you special instructions. Water bills are out. They are due April 30th. We've received some feedback that some folks have not received their water bill. If you have not received your water bill and you are getting this message, please call because you likely do have one and it will be due April 30th. Charlotte Colette Memorial Scholarship, they're due May 1st. Do we have the same scholarship committee? Was it last year? I think Jen was on it. I think Dale was on it. Was it you? You guys all willing to do it again?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we have any in yet. And Trent, I know you may cover this during your portion later on, but was sent to the guidance office, so hopefully we get some applications in by May 1st. Two more things. Town election. So we have passed the filing deadline. Election is Tuesday, May 18th. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So a long day. Town of Manchester will hold the election here. It is here again, Kelly, right in this room. 3 council seats will be elected. Term is 4 years. We currently have 2 filed to run. Councilwoman Howe and former Councilman David Richardson have filed. So we have checked with our town attorney. We expect some write-in campaigns for folks that have expressed some interest but weren't able to get filed by the deadline. We then have a supervisor of elections member position open. Mr. Elman Wagner has graciously offered to fill this position and serve a long day. We discussed this a little bit last month, but we do need at least a consensus. I'd like to have a motion and a vote just for the record to approve appointing Mr. Elman Wagner as a board of supervisors of elections, and then we'll swear him in if you guys deem that's okay.
All right. I'll make a motion that we approve Elwin Wagner for the Board of Supervisors of the election.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, congratulations, Elwin, you just got yourself a long volunteer day.
Are you sure it's a congratulations?
Thank you for offering to do this and continue serving the town in a number of ways. If you don't mind coming up to maybe the microphone, so I'll read this, you state your name, and I'll then sign it, pass it down, you can sign it, and you're more than welcome to stay for the full meeting if you'd like to. So I'll read it, so I state your name.
Elwin Wagner,
Do affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States, and I will be faithful and will bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland, and will support the Constitution and laws thereof, and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of Board of Supervisors of Elections member according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
I do.
All right, thank you again. I'll pass this down if you can hang on for a minute.
Sure.
Ellen, I think you have to repeat that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was worried about that.
Yeah. If you messed up, we got to start from the beginning. You guys mind passing that down? And that is all I have for right now. I'll turn it over to the town administrator.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the community. We'll go ahead and start with the March 2021 Administrative Report. Pending items, the opioid litigation, I have nothing at this time. The Trout Unlimited project, the tree planting project has been scheduled between April 15th and the 26th. I do meet with representatives from State Highways and DNR tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock on the site. The Manchester Valley High School electronic signs. This is on the Board of Education agenda for their meeting tomorrow, and probably they will advise their staff to do a feasibility study on all three prospective sites out there. The AT&T mobility lease agreement, Tom and I, our town attorney and I have been working on this. Tom has been contacted by AT&T today. Both Tom and myself will get together and discuss those discussions later on this week or the beginning of next. The 3215 Long Lane property, I spoke to the realtor on April the 8th. Currently, we have 2 businesses that are looking at this property, so more to follow on that. The response to Mrs. Thomas at 3016 Wirtz Avenue, I've been keeping everybody up to speed on that. We continually work on that. Our Main Street tree trimming, this has been delayed until April the 15th and 16th due to weather, and that's a tentative date. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Code enforcement, you received a monthly code enforcement update. Under miscellaneous items, Resolution 01-2021, extension of leave. That's an agenda item that will be coming up later. MDOT-SHA will be enhancing the visibility with new markings at both the intersections of Main, York, and Westminster Streets, and also Route 30 and Route 27. The town and SHA partnered on this project, and this was in response to a concern of a resident, and this should be completed in June. So, the next 2 items, I don't want to confuse anybody, so I'm going to take it very slow and explain everything in detail. We're talking about 2 discharge permits. The first discharge permit has to do with our wastewater treatment plant, which last Thursday on April the 7th, we had a public hearing. The public hearing was actually requested by Mr. Edward Haley Jr. And Mr. Haley Jr. is from the Land Preservation Trust, and he requested the second public hearing, which at that public hearing, in fact, Councilperson Miller attended that public hearing. There was discussion back and forth in regards to enhancements at our wastewater treatment plant. And this is for the renewal of our discharge permit. We have 1 discharge permit, but we actually discharge at 2 different locations. So for the months of December, January, and February, we discharge into George's Run, which is a tributary of Pretty Boy Reservoir. And for the remainder 9 months of the year, we spray irrigate at the farm. So basically, we applied for a new discharge permit starting back in 2018. And due to COVID and due to the way MDE works, it finally got us to this point where we where we had the public hearing. So there were questions brought back and forth. I would probably, on a scale 1 to 10, being involved in many other public hearings, from what I've been told from Councilperson Miller and my staff, I would probably give this public hearing a 7. And we did okay. I'm a little concerned about a few things. Some of the additional requirements that they are going to place on the town and our discharge gives me heartburn. I have some issues, and I take issues with this. So the first item, and I'll go through this real quick because it's very important. The first item is we need to have a facility improvement plan in place, and this should be submitted to MDE no later than 6 months after the effective date of the permit. That's not really a problem, but we have to stay very close and observe this very closely on what's going to be included in that facility improvement plan. Now, to make myself clear so everybody understands, as you know, we are going through a feasibility study right now for Enhanced Nutrient Removal System, ENR, which is funded through MDE, which we're getting funds back from the bay fee that everybody pays into. So that's paid for. Are there other items within our treatment plant that needs upgraded? Yes, there is. That may not be covered under that ENR grant. So keep that in mind. So the second item, the plan should include but not limited to measures taken to address non-compliance issues and treatment work upgrade. A progress report will be due every 6 months after the plan is submitted and concurred by MDE. Basically, we have to write a letter every 6 months, tell them what's taking place, what upgrades have been done, and also any non-compliance issues that we have. Now we get into the nitty-gritty, and this is where I have heartburn. So, what they're putting on us is a monthly average concentration of nitrates, which equals 10 milligrams per liter for both outfalls. For both. Keep in mind, 10 milligrams per liter of nitrates is drinking water standards on raw water. That is very, very tight, very tight. It concerns me as far as discharge going out to George's Run, but it also concerns me out at our spray fields. Now, the next item comes into play. It also talks about the permit will be modified to add more stringent total nitrogen and total phosphorus requirements if ENR grant application is approved. Now, what that means is when the spray fields were built, it was an innovative system. We need those nutrients for the grass that is grown, and it's a special type of grass. And it was designed that the environment would take care of the nutrients that we put out there. We will be spraying basically pristine water on that ground. I don't know if we can meet those limits. Even with the ENR plan, I don't know if we can meet those limits. That's what gives me issue. So, being in this predicament once before, and many, many years ago when they lowered our phosphorus limit, we have the availability of appealing their decision. Chances are we're not going to win. But I think as long as we get documentation to them, basically saying, we have a feeling we can't meet these limits even with the new treatment process, I think that may give us ammunition for the future if we do go out of violation. In theory, it doesn't make sense to me, especially the nitrate level, and I'm worried about where they're going to want us to sample the effluent or the treated water, because if we have to sample the treated water where it's discharged out on the ground, we're not going to cut it, because if you remember the way the operation works, the actual water comes in at one end of the lagoon is open, we have geese, ducks, everything else on the lagoon. That creates a coliform problem, increases the nitrate level, and then they're going to make a sample right before it hits the ground. There's no way we can meet those standards. There's no way. So right now, I think I'm gonna try to appeal this, try to write a letter, and see what we can come up with once the permit is issued to us. Once the permit is issued, then we can appeal those items and then move forward. So there's more to follow on that. So, any questions on that? That was a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Yeah, what happens if we can't meet it?
Then we have to prove to MDE, these are the reasons why we cannot meet your standards. Now, does the engineering firm feel that with the new technology out there, we can meet it? They got to prove that we can meet it. The installation, the company that installs the process, has to prove, sure, that's all well and good for the first couple years, but we have to look at the long haul. We have to look out 5, 10 years, and can we meet at that point in time?
I wonder if there's any assistance from MML that would be possible. We can't be the only ones that have gone through this, right? I mean,
I've heard of many other cases throughout, Carroll County. Yeah. But I feel that these limitations that they're going to be putting on us, those are clean water standards, and that's over the top, so.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Is there others out there who share your concerns?
I'm sure there, and I
Yeah, they
believe
experienced
when I received the draft permit, we could meet these standards. We could meet these standards. That's not a problem. These requirements were put on right before the second public hearing. And I think they were trying to address the concerns that the conservation group had.
Do you know how long it takes to get an appeal? Like, once you turn it in? No.
I would say at the rate that MDE moves, it could be years. It could be a couple of years. But at least we could get the documentation going. That basically back in 2021, we said we don't feel we can meet these standards unless. But
so in the meantime, do we have to meet the standards or prove that we can't meet the standards during the appeal?
I think what you're going to see is the permit will be issued with the new standards and the requirements. Will the new plant be under construction at that time? Doubt it. I mean, we have a long ways to go on that. The study won't be completed probably, I think it's in Rodney's report, probably till May or June. Then we have to go through the engineering phase. Who are we going to pick for an engineer? Then we have to secure the funding, and so we would be under the gun right out of the gate. Now, would they have an understanding that, hey, we are trying, we are moving forward, we are, trying to get this under construction? Can't answer that. You would think that they would take that under consideration, but I can't guarantee that.
I kind of got the feeling that they would. They didn't come out and say it, but from things that they said, I got the impression that they're going to understand there's going to be obstacles and we're not going to be able to just do it overnight.
Right. Do I feel that the virtual public hearing may have helped us? I have to say yes. I've been included in public hearings for permits before, and I've had as many as 6 conservation groups present. And but anyway, that's where we're at. I'll keep you updated. We're moving forward.
I guess all we can do right now is move forward and start the appeal process.
Correct. Wait till we get the permit out there and make sure they're aware of that. Now, second item, and here's where I don't want you to get confused. Let's talk stormwater now. So, we are in, some of you may remember back in 2014, through the Water Resources Coordination Council at Carroll County, the county and all 8 municipalities joined together, and we signed an agreement. All the mayors signed it, and we are under one MPDS discharge permit for our stormwater management across the county. Now, being said, which comes off the top of our town-county agreement. There is monies taken out for staff personnel at the county, and then also monies taken out for upgrades or retrofits to different stormwater management facilities throughout the county. As you recall, we just had one of those retrofits done at Whispering Valley, and that was part of that. The monies that are put in are shared across the board for different other projects throughout the county. So that next generation permit is coming out, and we're preparing ourselves for that. And the county has done a fantastic job getting all of these projects completed, and also they've done an outstanding job in getting grant money. So I believe right now we pay annually $49,615 into this fund. So that can be reduced because of the number of projects that were done, and also the county has graciously agreed to pick up the difference, where starting with fiscal year 22, our matching fund, our fund, would drop down to $28,573 and be increased 5% over the lifetime of the next generation permit, or 5 years. So this MOA is a perpetual MOA that we would like for the councils and the mayors to look over. We would like the mayors and the commissioners to sign. And then at that point in time, it would be perpetual. The thing that would change would possibly be our contribution when the next generation permit comes out in 5 years. And at that point in time, the representative on the WRCC would be responsible for bringing that back to their mayors and councils, have their mayor and council approve it, and then it would be a vote would be taken at the WRCC. So I sent this out to everybody. I want you to kind of digest it, and then I believe it's our June 28th meeting of the WRCC. We would like to move on this and move forward on this. So that'll give you a little bit of time to digest it, and if you have any questions, please get in touch with me and I'll see if I can answer that. One other item, I would like to see if you like this idea, if you're on board with this idea, I would like to see the savings that we would be saving put into our general budget for stormwater management, because we have many repairs out there when it comes to our stormwater management system, inlets, pipes, things like that. But as I said years before, and I like a broken record, I feel that stormwater management is going to be the next utility for counties and municipalities across Maryland. I can foresee that. So, but any questions on that?
What date was that in June?
Our WRCC meeting is June 28th. So we'll be meeting whatever day that is in June. So we'll have an answer. Okay. Wow, that was a lot. COVID-19, I'll be quick. Vaccinations as of last Friday, April 9th, 16 of our 24 employees have been fully vaccinated. Christmas Tree Park is open for the season, and we've posted notifications in regard to COVID safety precautions throughout the park. And also Charlotte's Quest, I've been working with a young lady at the county, and I've passed some very good information on to the folks at Charlotte's Quest. And they've been doing very well down there. So, all right. Any questions on my report?
Are you going to hit some highlights from Public Works?
I will do that real quick. Yep. You have in front of you the monthly water and wastewater report for March. Of course, DPW and all the other departments are continuing to work in a safe manner during COVID. Public Works is continually working on the budget process. Underwater, the Walnut Street well spring house, the electric work's 100% complete, and the interior pipe work is to be completed by town staff. The Park Avenue Water Tower Rehab Project, the project's running a little bit behind. about a month due to a few obstacles. Completion date remains the same, Wednesday, June 30th. Under wastewater, the ENR upgrade and operational expansion, the PER, which I talked about, looks like it'll be to us late April, early May. The UV disinfection system, Phase 2, that project's also running a month behind due to a few obstacles, and it's supposed to have a kickoff meeting this week, and that's being done, as you well know, by SWAM Electric. I talked enough about the wastewater treatment plant discharge permit. Rodney wanted to thank Councilperson Jennifer Miller for speaking on the town's behalf. Also, he'd like to thank Kayla Matthews and Delbert Green for all their preparation and assistance. Parks, maintenance, and facilities, the town parks, bathrooms are open. Mowing and mulching operations have begun, and he has no action items for this evening.
Any questions on either administration issues, so forth?
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I thought it might be in the report, the one large leak, you can see that on the pumping data report, if I'm not mistaken, we were down to 299,000 gallons per day, almost 300,000. But the leak was repaired at 2912 Hanover Pike on 3/22. So I've been asking how the daily numbers are. I've been told they're okay. They're down, basically down to normal. And when I say normal, we're like in the range of 270, 280,000 gallons a day. Councilperson Smith asked me tonight. I didn't hear anything about this, but apparently there may be something going on out in the Manchester Farms area. So
They said there's a leak, they're
yeah, I don't
working
know.
on it today.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that could be coming from the data loggers that we have out in the system, so. All right.
Any other questions? Chief, police report?
Yes, sir. For the month of March, we handled 260 events, citizen calls, dispatch calls, on-view incidents. 142 of those calls were calls for service, 17 of which were out of town. We did have 2 Part 1 incidents involving thefts. One involved a multitude of larceny from autos. They hit the areas along Main Street and a couple of the neighborhoods coming off of Park Avenue and Westminster Street. My guys deployed on foot late at night. We ended up catching all 3 of them with the use of night vision. And it turns out it was 2 juveniles with lengthy criminal records from Reisterstown. The one had a record consisting of arson, handgun violation, sex offense, and a multitude of thefts. They lived down around the Franklin, Baltimore County precinct. So we were able to clear that up. Most of the property we recovered with the exception of the cash. We have no idea what they did with the cash. And the other incident involves a, where did I start at?
How's that? Is that good? The other one involves a van where they're taking tools. They've actually hit Town and a couple other areas in the county. We haven't had any success with those suspects yet.
That's right there. I know.
Huh?
I'm just getting up from Tracy. Can you get a little closer? Sorry.
Can I get a little closer?
Can you bring it closer? Just a little, thank you.
Okay. How's this? Can you hear me now, Trace? Where am I? Okay, so we criminally charged 5 persons for this month, 3 of which were the juveniles. 2 were for traffic-related charges. The officers have issued 369 warnings, citations, and repair orders. And we're continuing to have a major problem with our residents with speed and clearly not paying attention to the stop sign. So whoever's out there listening, I'm just asking you to please stop, please slow down. It's warm out, the kids are out playing, the parents are out walking, people are walking their dogs, and we're definitely having a speeding problem. We've upset a few people, but we gotta do what we gotta do. We get a lot of complaints, we have to address the complaints, and we're not gonna turn a blind eye to the complaints. And I can tell you the enforcement's gonna continue for this month. They really upped their ante on traffic enforcement. County-wide year-to-date stats for the overdose problem shows a 29% increase when compared to the same period last year. Year-to-date, we have had 115 cases. Our fatalities are a 100% increase. 18 year-to-date in comparison to 9. The municipalities account for the following: Manchester 0, Hampstead 5, Sykesville 1, Tawnytown 11, Mount Airy 4, Westminster 40, New Windsor 2, and Union Bridge 0. As you know, Jeffrey Kazmaier, my sergeant, retired, and he wanted me to say thank you to the mayor and council for attending his party. He really appreciated it, and he's definitely going to be missed. He was here today, so he hasn't been gone that long. He popped in for free coffee. That's about it.
Couple of things. I think I'll start with, please pass on, I think everybody did. But just, for the record, pass on, thank you. Congratulations on a great career, and best of luck getting some rest and relaxation to Sergeant Kazmaier. He will be missed. Also, thank you to you. I think you did a great job throwing a great retirement party, given the challenges of this year and things you can and can't do.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed myself. I think you did an outstanding job, and treating folks the way that you did with Sergeant Kazmaier, both while they're here and while they're retiring, I think says a lot about how you run the department. So, with a lot of bad feelings of police going on in the country, we continue to be, probably a bright spot in policing. That says a lot about the people that we have and the leadership. So, thanks for running a great
And the community, yep.
Second thing, which is a little bit less emotional than that, I see some of the yellow signs out, the movable yellow signs are. I know we probably don't have a ton of empirical data, but do they seem to be helping when somebody says, hey, on my street, somebody's running stop signs, somebody's going fast, and we put one of the flashing yellow signs out? Do we
Yes,
see
and people are requesting them now. There's an increase in requesting.
Yeah.
So they do help. They deter it.
Do they collect data at all?
Yes, they do. Yep, goes up to the cloud, and then we get it.
Okay. Uh-oh. Yeah. Do they have pictures of the council in the hall?
I'm not going to confirm or deny it.
He knows all about my driving record.
Yeah, and I think, as we go forward, there's enforcement, there's physical barriers, and then as technology continues to change, we should continue to discuss what are the new things on the horizon that we can do, that don't affect movability through town, don't affect public safety. We need to get someplace, but can get folks to slow down. I've had a number of conversations. I don't go too far on the tangent on a busy night, but it's somebody that I see when I walk, and I see them speeding, and then they tell me people are speeding next to their house, right? So, and I know we talk about that all the time, but what they said to me recently, I said, because I saw them going through, and I had a very nice conversation, and they said, well, I could see nobody was walking a dog, or there wasn't a kid on a bike. So that's when it happens, though, right? When you don't
Yep.
see them. If you see them, you wouldn't have hit them. Not that
Yep.
they did, but so we really need to slow down and find ways to get this done before we have bad incidents.
But I do see a lot of them run stop signs
Oh,
in
they
the
blow right
neighborhoods.
past
They
them.
just slow down, look, just keep on going. It's worries me.
Anything else for the chief? Mike wasn't on.
Chief, the only other thing, have we gotten any complaints in regards to, and it might, maybe not, because it might technically be private property, where Sheetz lets out and connects into the Gary Business Center? I have seen quite a few cars just assume that they have the right of way, come zipping out of Sheetz into the Gary Business Center, not paying attention to the road at the top. Is that something that we could request, like some kind of yield sign or something?
I think we would have to do that. That's
Would that have
private
to go
property,
through-
right, Steve, for all
Okay.
intents and purposes? Because the other problem is the actual road coming from Sheetz, going the long lane. Only one car can fit on it.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's all in due time. My suggestion would be having that a one-way going down. Is that what we talked about? from long, not up, or vice versa.
Yeah, going down.
Going down,
One way going down.
going down. And then Sheets exit out at the red light. But no complaints, but I know
Okay.
the problem that you're talking about.
Okay,
So that would have to be a compromise between Sheets and the Gary Business Center.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, we might even just put a sign there in the meantime. I mean, just try just like the same way you would signal like a one-lane bridge, like
Right.
one lane ramp.
Right.
And I don't know if we've had, I'm sure we've all driven on it, I don't know if we've had incidents over there, but.
None yet, and as bad as the winter was, there was none. We didn't have any. I thought for sure we would.
Yeah.
It's been close, but, and if they have, they haven't reported it.
All right, anything else for the chief? Before we move on? All right, the next item on the agenda, ordinance 247, related to the fiscal year 22 budget. So everybody here has been through the budget process before. We introduced the tax rates, so this is just introducing the real property tax rate, maintaining the same rate of 21.6 cents per $100 of assessed value. So no tax increase on tax rates this year. We do have a little bit of work to do on budget line items, which we'll be working on tonight, and then we'll come before the council for a vote in May. So that's really it. I'm not going to read the entire thing. We will have copies of it if anybody's so interested, but it maintains the tax rate, holds that steady. Any questions on that? Anybody in the community comments out that came to speak on? We can do that now if you want. Okay. All right, next item, resolution 1-2021, so first resolution of this year. This is related to moving out the expiration date of leave for employees. So as you may imagine, it's a difficult year, so we have leave accumulating. Employees have not been able to take off leave in order to keep up. So we extended this once. This extends it one more time on a use it or lose it basis from June 30th, 2021 to the end of September 30th, 2021. So this would require a vote tonight. I believe we can vote on this tonight, right? Just resolution, yeah. We can table it if you'd like to, but I'd like to just kind of get this settled behind us if possible.
Can I ask a question? Like, I see in here you have 1 hour credited for each hour of time worked. How many, since we're still in a state of emergency, how many days have people accrued?
Not too many,
Not
since
too many?
we received the CARES funding and we were able to pay.
To
the
pay them
employees
instead
all.
of-
That is correct.
Instead of that. So, but if we continue with this,
Yes, and
people,
that's,
you work 5 days and you get 5 days, right?
it's hour for hour, and that's the way our current personnel policy is, and we use the emergency leave, policy, which is
Yeah, but we didn't
stated.
think a state of emergency was gonna last over a year.
We're not
I
in it
would
right
think.
now.
Right.
Something
We're
wrong
not
right now.
working, yeah, we're back to normal. I mean, all of our shifts are back to normal, our offices
Oh,
opened up.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the little bit of time that they have accumulated is very minimal compared
Gotcha.
to what it was.
Thank you. I
And
was just unsure how it was
Again,
working.
I didn't put it in my report, but we do have to have a personnel policy meeting on that. And if I'm not mistaken, that was by an order from the mayor, that was reduced down to .5.
So it's your fault.
It's my fault.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I want to say, I don't remember exactly how far into it. It may have been a month or so into this last year. We put out an order cutting it in half.
I just had the mental image that everybody's got like 30 days and they're all gonna take them all at one time, so I just,
Yeah.
Well,
I got
right,
you.
not on COVID time, but we do have, people, because of the way it works, and you
Yeah.
don't wanna lose your whole workforce, that they have as much as 20 days left to use in the next, or more to use in the next
Yeah.
couple months.
no, nobody should lose the days. I just was curious as to how it was working. I just had this image of that, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a valid question. And there's kind of a couple things at play here, like, from an operational standpoint, we don't want everybody taking off at the same time. You can't, so we want to be able to give flexibility when they're taking off regular time.
Okay.
From a budget standpoint, I think that we were able to use CARES funding to fix what was gonna become a problem. From, fix this problem from happening in the future, what we discussed before is we do have to probably get through this budget and then sit down and hammer out what's fair, what works operationally, what's fair to employees, and what can we sustain financially.
Okay.
The previous emergency plan was really meant to deal with snowstorms.
Snowstorms,
and
yeah, that's why I
water
said,
main breaks.
first time we've encountered
and
like
natural
a,
disaster of some kind,
Yeah.
not a year-long pandemic, so.
right,
We'll have to come up with a way to
gotcha.
address that if something like this happens again. And there'll be things coming out, there'll be best practice. We don't have to invent the wheel on this, there'll be best practice, because a lot of municipalities were in a pretty similar situation. So with that being said, with the piece of this that this covers is just spreading it out so that the folks that have that leave can take it over a longer period of time.
We need a motion, right?
We need, motion in a second.
I make a motion, we move forward with resolution number 1-2021 relating to the expiration of regular leave.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Yeah, the other thing, this is just a quick aside before we move on, is we talked about removing all of the state of emergency for Manchester at one point, but it was kind of like a lot of the other municipalities were in the same boat. You didn't want to do that in case that would affect any assistance coming from the state or federal government down the road. So then we kind of had to keep that so that we were eligible for, for that kind of aid, that, in fact, it's the stuff that we expect to get even going forward. All right, next item, discussion of Patriots Overlook Annexation Agreement. We have our attorney, Mr. McCarron, here tonight. I don't know if it makes sense to do these in this order or the other order. Do you have an opinion?
I was just thinking in the order that the planning commission had set forth. I think that's how we handle Lippy, if I'm not.
I meant, Lippy or Patriots.
Patriots.
Oh,
I mean, we could flip the order here if it makes sense to do one first or versus the other.
It may be quicker to do Patriots.
Okay.
It seems less complicated, and some of this we discussed in Lippy anyway, so this one might be quicker. The Patriots over.
I'll give you the floor here and you can walk through the points that came from the planning commission.
Sure.
So kind of what the conversation we had earlier, what I think maybe makes sense on this one is, you remember the discussion we had last month on Lippy, where we walked through the planning commission, planning and zoning commission comments and kind of got a consensus, and that gave Mr. McCarron something to go to their attorney and then start to see where there's a meeting of the minds and see where there's something that can be hashed out. So, is that somewhat of an introduction? So if you want to walk through and then
Sure.
he can read the comments and we can discuss.
Sure, so the first point from the planning commission, the first condition recommended was zoning at R 20,000, it's probably not very controversial, but that's the way the petition came in, and that's what our current documents say, so I don't know if anybody has any different thought than that one. If not, I'll skip to the next one, which is water and sewer. The planning commission had recommended, similar to in the Lippy annexation, that all water and sewer costs related to the achievement of development would essentially be paid by the developer. This would include pump station, force mains, trunk lines, and distribution lines. In addition, and as with Lippy, the recommendation is to include a provision that the applicant will be required to size all water and sewer infrastructure with a 20% reserve for use at the town's discretion to address future existing water connections. Supposing you all agree that that's something that should be in the annexation agreement, we already have the language from Lippy, so it'd just be a matter of taking it from Lippy and plugging it in here.
And just, I guess for the record, we're not voting on these individual things today. What we're trying to do is clarify what we're going to be voting on. So I think the discussion is in the direction that Mr. McCarron needs is, for each of these comments, do we agree to consensus yet? That makes sense to have that as part of the discussion. We then get to the end and you guys vote on whether or not you approve the annexation or decide not to approve the annexation. But this is kind of like, what are we voting on?
Right, so if I could just clarify just a little further, I guess ultimately, our option is to vote to disapprove the annexation, to approve the annexation, or to approve the annexation with these, what we've been calling conditions.
Yes.
We don't have to do these.
Right, that's probably true, I think.
That's right. And the conditions would have, of course, have to be accepted by the petition.
Any thoughts so far?
And I'm definitely on board with listening to what, planning and zoning had to say and taking their recommendations. You know, as I go through all this, I don't know about everybody else, but that's kind of how I feel. I look to them for some recommendations because that's what they've spent so much time on. Kind of how I feel.
I think that makes sense. So what,
If we agree to go forward with
Right.
any annexation,
Yes.
because we
Right.
don't have to go with any
No.
annexation.
or discussion.
Right.
Yeah, so I think the direction we need on Patriot is, do we want to make any changes to the planning and zoning comments for purposes of drafting an annexation agreement, which can be considered and voted on?
A proposal, if you will.
A proposal. And just because we make a proposal,
Right.
that's just language, it's not, that's right, the business sense. So.
Okay.
If there's no latest comments, I can move down the list and.
Okay. The next one has to do with transportation. It simply was all transportation costs related to achievement and development will be paid by the developer. Recall that on the levy side, there were some specific road improvements that at least they wanted, the planning commission, you know, wanted to achieve. We'll talk about those later. I don't believe the planning commission had any specific road improvements that, you know, design that they had in mind. So this is fairly standard. So I'm not sure this would be that controversial, but anyway. And then lastly, it has to do with open space. Any usable open space provided for joint use by the residents must show plans for use, providing for perpetual care of open space recreational area must be provided for. I'm not sure whether they had in mind specifically an HOA, but it sort of sounds like that's where they're headed there. Subject to approval by the planning commission and zoning commission. I'm sorry, the planning and zoning commission. And those were all of the conditions, the sole sum of the conditions.
Anybody have any thoughts, so we can give Mr. McCarron some direction on how to proceed? With the Lippy one, how, I was trying to look it up here. Did we specifically put in HOA? Or is that still something that we're being discussed?
Discuss
Said
that.
that we would reserve the right, and that will be a discussion piece, because, on Libby, because they did have some comments about
Okay.
that.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, the reason I was asking is, do we want to? I mean, I think the options for the council are, at this point, to give Mr. McCarron some direction, whether or not you make any changes or small changes in consistency to what we're doing with the other one, or tell him not to.
I mean, I think if we're, not that there's any decision, obviously, but the HOA thing is kind of important to me with us, the maintenance for if they decide to vote on it, the maintenance for the town, you know, that type of thing, what we're gonna be taking on, I think we should consider them having an HOA where they would take on, some of that, if, again, if we vote on that.
I don't think we're voting right now anyway, right?
No.
And would that be something that would be handled in planning and zoning? I guess.
I think that, I thought we talked before, if it's something, we don't wanna let planning, we want things in, if we would decide on the different annexations, whichever we decide, did we not talk about we would want it done before it goes to planning and zoning?
We did talk about that.
Yes.
Like, for instance, what I was gonna recommend here in Patriots Overlook is, I would like to add in now, there will be no clustering. I know it's been said, hey, wait, let's wait till it gets back to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
It
But
could be somebody
it
totally
could be a
different,
brand new
planning and zoning, the election
commission at that
department
point.
and stuff, so. We don't know who's gonna stay, who's gonna, you know, you never know who's gonna stay or who's gonna leave.
You know, I'll just, you know, on here, I'll say what some of the residents have said in the past. There's a big sign that says Patriots Overlook's gonna all be 1+ acres. And now I look down and see 20,000, so the last thing I wanna do is then cluster further.
That sign then advertising the ones that are currently in the county, so.
The sign's still there.
Yeah, the sign's still up.
Okay, any other, discussion or direction for the town attorney on this one? So is the consensus then, that some of those changes to take that, plus planning and zoning comments, and then begin to work with the other attorney in a similar fashion to get comments towards drafting something to be voted on? Is that the direction? I mean, unless anybody, I don't know if we have to vote specifically to do that. If there was a different action, I just want to make sure that we're giving the town attorney some action. Do we want to treat this in a similar manner, or does anybody want to do?
I think we would only have to vote if somebody made a motion to deny annexation in total.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no need for a vote tonight.
No need for a vote. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak their piece, and we're getting a consensus to get some direction so that we don't come back a month from now and like not know, what
And
we're
I
doing.
think it's fair that we get all the information, just like we're doing on Lippy, and then we make some, educated decisions.
Okay.
Just my opinion, but.
Everybody okay with that? All right. Does that give you enough direction?
It does.
Okay. All right, then we'll move.
Wait, Ryan,
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mind coming to the mic? I'm sorry.
Closer to your mic or something, I can barely.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear anybody.
I'll take my mask off if it helps. Yeah,
Fine,
it's
you have
on.
another-
Is that better? I'll try to. Is this related to Patriots?
Yes, it is.
Okay, do you mind coming up to the mic? I'll try to speak up, guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had a little trouble hearing Clark Schaefer, the attorney for Patriots. Did I hear something about no clustering, or
you did.
is it, did I?
Yes.
It's R20,000, it was R40, as you know. We're asking for R20. But the plans that we've shown the Planning Commission, I think, included, Marty Hackett's not here, but I think it included some, I don't know if you call it clustering, but some lots that are under 20,000 square feet. And I can tell you that the gentleman that was here at the public hearing, the neighbor, I forget his name, I could pull it out of my file, but he was an immediate neighbor. We talked to him extensively in the parking lot. He was, and I'm gonna tell you what he said, and of course you can check with him, but he was very happy to see that we were creating open spaces, because he had thought that all these lots would be right next to his. And when he saw the plans that we submitted that we had submitted, he didn't have them. They had been with you for a while, he didn't have them. When he saw those, he said to us out there, gee, I don't mind this. He was happy with it. All that clustering, and clustering, if it were submitted, it would obviously have to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and approved by them or not. But what it does is allow you to have slightly smaller lots, not more density, so to speak, but smaller lots, and use the saved acreage for open space and makes your development nicer. You know, so I mean, I don't know what else to say but that, but, and from a marketing standpoint, I don't know, people are just, frankly, are as happy on a 10,000 acre lot as they are on a 20,000, especially if there's open space around. That is common open space. So I would ask you to at least consider leaving that open for review by the Planning Commission when the actual plans come in, instead of making us spread out. Now, to be frank, from the developer's standpoint, the clustering is a plus because the water and sewer lines are shorter. The roads still have to be about the same, but it cuts down a little bit on infrastructure, which cuts down on stormwater runoff, et cetera. So that can also be a plus. So it can be a good tool. And I would urge you to consider not making it an absolute no way at this time as part of an annexation agreement. And by the way, we're okay with all the Planning Commission recommendations. So I just wanted to make that, when I heard the clustering thing, I think our plans, the two that we submitted, at least one of them involves some kind of clustering to create open space. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, and please, you know, like, in your response, I think these are the comments that'll go out to you. Anything else on Patriots Overlook? Now we're gonna move on to Lippy.
Sure, so, after our last meeting, I prepared and I ran by staff before submitting to the developer, language that I thought, expressed your intention from the last meeting. They had an opportunity to review it, they had some red lines back to me, and then I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Hill and Mr. Hyatt at their office, about 2 weeks ago, maybe, a week and a half maybe. I prepared this chart to just kind of do a side-by-side comparison of the language that I had suggested versus their comments, and then sort of our responses, ours being staff and myself. In addition to that, your copy probably also includes some comments back from the applicant or petitioner in response to our comments. So what you have in front of you in this chart kind of brings you up to date. I'll just highlight each item. The first item, 5.2, the concern here from the Planning Commission was to have some mechanism by which the town could essentially, not formally phase, but phase or mete out, or I should say control the completion of units, so that not too many units came on before road improvements were completed, basically, is the idea here. The developer, I think, made a reasonable and good suggestion. We do that through essentially building permits. We control the number of building permits, basically. Now, we do have an ordinance already that does some of that work. Section 205J basically says that I'm paraphrasing here, for a subdivision, no more than 25 building permits per year per subdivision shall be issued within a year commencing on the day of the first permit issued. So we have some of that control already built into our ordinance, into our code. The question would be, is there something about the road improvements versus the units want more control of in the annexation agreement.
So essentially, in their comment is, right, I mean, read it, 40 lots is too few to phase, like a Manchester Farms or something, there's like 7 phases,
Right.
which probably made sense, right?
Right, agreed.
Right,
This
and that
is
would
much-
be controlled by the code you cited.
Yeah, so there already is a control in the code. It's just a question of would you want to narrow that, or at least reserve the right to control it even further until such time as the road improvements are completed.
Is that something that can be done in planning and zoning? So like, it would be kind of hypothetical for us, so it's, if you're saying it's already 25, right, that's the max. And then, however the configuration is, we could planning and zoning then say, hey, this kind of goes first, so that you plug these 2 roads together, and then you do this one rather than, because, right, it's all hypothetical right now.
Yeah, there is an element of that, and as with some of this, these are things that you could put off to the development review process. Of course, the issue then is that that's in the hands of the planning commission, not necessarily in the hands of the council. So, in the annexation agreement, now would be the time that the council wanted to exert some measure of control on that. But as with a lot of these things, it's hard to get specific at this juncture. Some of it, you're just gonna have to trust the planning commission and sort of punt, if you will, until such time as the development review process is underway, when more specifics are at the commission's disposal than we have now.
I don't even know what else we would put in there. Right now.
Right, I'm not sure.
For purposes of drafting a proposal, are you guys okay with the way that is right now?
Well, it's 40 lots, and it can only be 25 a year. You're right, how much more would we take it down?
Change it to 23, like that.
Yeah.
I could envision crafting something that doesn't get so specific, but at least reserves the right in the planning commission of the town to, put the brakes on building permit issuance, even more so than the ordinance, depending on the circumstances on the ground, if you will, when the development review process is underway. You could do something like that, perhaps. That's not real specific, but it at least gives you something.
I don't know, what do you guys think?
I mean, to be honest, if we already have the 25 in, I don't see much difference between 25 or 23
Or 20.
or 20. Yeah, it's,
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 considerations. There's the number, and then are there any other controls that you would want? My opinion is maybe let that get handled once they get a little further along with what the development might look like, assuming that it goes forward. It's gonna go forward some way anyway.
I mean, if it already has 25, I'm okay with that, because that's already kind of in there and being controlled. I mean, there's some other things that I think we should talk about that should be handled too before it goes to planning and zoning, but you'll get to those.
Okay. I think this is just phasing is all this is.
Yeah.
So I think we're good there.
Okay, 5.3 has to do with open space. The petitioner was concerned that there isn't a formal definition of usable. I will say that, what I put into the agreement is fairly standard in terms of planning terms, but I will also say that some municipal codes, for instance, define usable by grade, so in very specific terms. I did not endeavor to do that here. I think that the petitioner did not want to be, felt it impossible to make all the open space usable, that they may be agreeable to some percentage, and obviously it's probably too early to pluck out what that percentage is now. But the petitioner also had some issues with, as written, whether or not the open space should be devoted for the use of only the residents of the subdivision, or whether or not it might be used by other town residents. The point there being that if an HOA is going to be charged with maintaining any of the open space, then really only the residents of that subdivision should use it. That's the point that the developer was making on that. They question whether or not the town can require an HOA, but that's kind of a moot point. I think that bottom line is that the petitioner's preference is that all the open space be conveyed to an HOA, and that the HOA would be responsible for maintaining that space, and that it would be devoted only to the residents of that particular subdivision. So that's kind of the issue here. As the developer would later comment, their focus really is on the issue of active recreation. I think their concern is that there may be limited opportunity for the kind of active recreation that perhaps the term usable open space might conjure up. This is very related to the second point and on the issue of clustering, and that has to do with section 5.4. I'll cover that because the developer, as mentioned by Mr. Schaefer's comments earlier on Patriots Overlook, draws a link here, and this has to do with clustering. The language that I had proposed was that the town reserves the right to prohibit or limit the clustering. So I had not drafted as an outright prohibition at this point, simply a reservation of the right to deny clustering at a later time. Their concern was that with an ability to cluster comes the ability to give more open space, an ability to give more, quote, usable open space, however anyone might wish to define that. So I think that they had some significant concerns about that. And if you're not going to cluster, their point is, the result is very limited open space, and then why have an HOA if there's not a lot of open space for an HOA to be taken care of, maintaining basically. Do make the point that clustering is not of right under our ordinance. Under our ordinance, in this case, the Planning Commission may allow clustering. I think that subject to being corrected by Mr. Hill or Mr. Hackett, I believe they made the point that at least as it's currently designed as a cluster, none of the lots are smaller than the zoning that it seeks to have on an annexation. But again, that could be subject to correction. I think that's what they told me. And of course that could be changed later though in the development review process. So in all events, those open space and clustering issues are linked, and that's why I brought them up for comment together.
Mr. Hill, did you want to address something that was just discussed?
Yes, trying to remember it all now. We moved along a good bit, but our comment on usable isn't the issue. It was that I think the language stated that it all had to be usable for active recreation, and I don't think we can guarantee that. I don't think, and the Planning Commission can show us how we can do all of that. We certainly have enough land out there to be able to provide some large parcels. I remember at the planning commission, and Dale might recall, there were some comments, and maybe Steve might even have mentioned that the area where the pond is and the way our last draft showed a lot of open space in that area, that could be an active park area for the town. So it's not that we want to cluster in order to reduce lot size. We feel we cluster, we can create a more usable and more attractive community, not to save any real cost on anything, because as Mr. McCarron pointed out, I think Marty Hackett had shared with him, none of the lots in our last proposed draft are less than the half acre zoning anyway. It's just to be able to create a creative, that's the word I guess, a more creative community. And that's our intention. I repeat what Mr. Schaefer said as far as the clustering. Planning Commission makes that call. And the Planning Commission is a big driver in these points that have been brought up. So I would think that the council would have confidence in the Planning Commission being able to make that call on clustering. I would hope that it would not be a prohibition in the annexation agreement itself, but to do what we've done on developing in Manchester forever, leave it up to the Planning Commission, and I think they've done a pretty good job. I don't know of any communities that they have allowed to slip through that took advantage of anything. So I think they've established a track record, and even though Mr. Wilder is going to be leaving it, I think he'll leave it in good hands.
So if I could, I'm gonna destroy this. I believe there's two types of clustering. There's what we think of as a type of clustering where it's gonna be a half acre lot. You put a house on a quarter acre and give the other quarter back to the town as open space. And then there's a type of clustering where you can bring in like homes, I think as Mr. Hill's suggesting, where you bring them together, they're still gonna be on those half acre lots, but that open space will be a pond or something else.
There will be sizable enough parcels to have some good usable space, and there'll be some other areas that'll just be creating more of a natural environment. Because if you have an area behind maybe some lots that is 30, 40, 50 feet wide, I mean, it's really more of a nature area than it is an active area. If you have the area that lies down towards Route 30 and up towards the Cult Rider property, that's a large area, and that could create some more active space. So I think it's the design is critical. And I believe the plans that we've shared, even the last ones that we just provided to give you an example of what could be developed using the plan without annexation and with annexation, demonstrates that with the annexation and the ability to cluster that, we can create a much more attractive community, and one that I think would be much more acceptable to the current residents, and particularly in the immediate area.
Yeah, I think the only concern there is in that type of clustering where you're maintaining those half acre lots.
Right.
Is there's now open space that the town has to maintain. And that's why the HOA discussion kind of comes into play, is
We
because
don't want any more usable space in the neighborhoods where we have to take care of them.
Well, that's why the HOA, we don't,
Yeah, but how can you how do you know they're gonna have an HOA?
Well, if you create open space, you have to create an HOA because you have to have a means to collect funds to maintain it. And if you don't have an HOA and you don't record these documents when you record the lots, then you can't collect any money to pay for things. But when you properly record everything, then you have the right, if someone doesn't pay their HOA fees, to place a lien on the property.
Right.
And you get your money. I mean, we've done thousands of lots with HOAs, and Jim's had the job on a lot of them of collecting the money, and I don't think right now in all of Valley Hill, which is, what's that, 200 lots? How many people haven't paid? And that's two since inception, not just two right now. So it works, and I believe the maintenance that has been provided and the maintaining the communities has all been very positive. They're desirable lots, desirable communities. And when you create the HOA, you set up all the legal documents, you shouldn't have any trouble doing it. I mean, down at Roberts Field in Hampstead, I mean, I think we have 1,000 homes in there. And now, hate to say how many years that's been on the ground.
My issue with the complete, try to use the right words here, the complete prohibition against clustering is, I kind of agree with what Dale just said, is that we have an idea of kind of what we want, but if we put too many parameters on the Planning and Zoning Commission, it takes away their flexibility in trying to meet the needs and come up with the best community they can. So, we don't really know what we're getting into with the road yet. We don't really know what we're getting into environmentally yet. And if we wall off too many of those things, we may wind up with a less desirable community. Although I agree with you, the intent is it's half acre. As close to that as possible is good, for sure. But I also, I agree with Deb too. We don't want a lot of maintenance problems. We don't need more grass to mow.
No.
So. And I don't think we mow any, like in Halley, though, I don't think. I won't speak, we don't, yeah.
So I saw in here a possible percentage, was suggested at, I gotta scroll back to where it was. A percentage for usable or, active, whatever we decide to go with wording. Could it be a minimum of at least X percentage? Would that help clear that up? I'm looking at 5.3. Perhaps may agree to some percentage. So I understand, I mean, we can't expect, it's not feasible to expect 100% of all of the space that's not being used for building to be used as usable. I mean, it's countryside. There's going to be hills. There's going to be, valleys. Could we look at a percentage, a minimum of at least X amount?
If you were to do that, I would request that you put in there the ability to come back to the council if you found yourself in an impossible situation.
And I'm not suggesting like 75% or anything extreme.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's necessary, but if you did want to go that way, I think there should be an appeal to the council if the council is the one making that requirement.
What I would suggest, and this is somebody that without a vote, but just like listening and having gone through this a couple of times, is that, and I don't think I'm going on limb to say, I think, even Hopedale sticks around in some capacity and continues to work with us, but we probably have the strongest planning and zoning we've had in decades. Is it may be if you wanted to go that way, rather than pulling a number out of the air and then throwing it and saying this percentage and come back if we can't do it, is to tell planning and zoning, if we were to go forward, our goal and what the council would like to see in representing folks is to really put an emphasis on the amount of usable or active recreation space. So as we're trying to meet multiple goals of a road that works, an intersection that works, lots that are a nice layout, is that we really want to have some things that's usable. If we put a percentage on something that's very tough to define, because the word usable and active recreation are kind of tough to define.
Well, and I'm not saying we have to, I just saw that it was one of the suggestions in the comments back and forth. I didn't know if that would help clarify our conversation for moving forward.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, and that was their suggestion, not mine. I would say that, I think if we were to tell planning and zoning, it's our desire that we maximize, that we seek to maximize usable and active recreation space in the design of this layout, so that, and then kind of let them figure out how to do that, rather than be silent on it.
I think the concern is, I think we all have faith in planning and zoning, but what if, unless you can make them all promise they'll be here at this time?
Yeah, and I can't promise it for them. I would like to think that well, I'll say this. Both of these developments have an in-town portion, regardless of whatever happens with an annexation. I would hope that the majority of those guys that have been working on these things and are experienced, and a lot of them have long tenures, that they would see some of these things through, rather than having a complete, we're pulling novices in, like you and I 20 years ago.
Well, this says, petitioner points out that the current pre-concept plans, none of the lots are designed to be smaller than what residential zoning will allow. So you're planning, would like to be to cluster, but not reduce the size of lots.
That's correct.
Is there a way to identify that? Because like I said, those two examples I gave of clustering, I think have official terms that go along with those.
So you're suggesting a provision in the annexation agreement that said, in effect, words the effect of that no clustering would be allowed that would result in lot sizes smaller than the zone for which it's, okay.
Now, we still have the open space issue to contend with. It seems to be
Sure.
a point of discussion. The
So
open,
that's
the
really not
usable,
clustering.
now I guess that's, so that's separate. Now that's another issue.
Yes.
This comfort level of everybody with usable open space.
I would suggest that you trust your planning commission. They've done a good job for years.
Any other thoughts on this one?
So address the clustering piece, then let the usage, the open space be discussed or decided by planning and zoning, that piece?
How much is quote, usable or active? Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one way you can go. I mean, you could certainly, say, look, the planning commission's gonna have more detail about that at a later time, and that's really something that should be subject, left to the development review process. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't have a percentage that I can give you. I recommend to you, and I'm not sure any of us here are in the position to say that at this point in time, to recommend a percentage or some minimum percentage. That wouldn't be fairly arbitrary at this juncture. Now, maybe somebody could, if they sat down and, opened the plans up and, started to calculate something, but I don't think that's been done.
You have to do one or the other. You have to have minimum acres, or you have to define one of, sorry. You either have to have minimum acres, or you have to define one or both of those terms.
Right.
Otherwise, you're complaining with percentage, and you're saying a percentage of X.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I seem to recall that somewhere in the code it does talk about an actual percentage usable for R40. I don't know if it gives any other details or not.
before we move on from clustering, because I don't, want to make sure I understand. I think Mr. Hill, I'll try to speak up, I'm sorry. I guess I'm not putting all the pieces together. So Mr. Hill, what I'm hearing is, the zoning's R20, and we want to cluster, but we don't want to make anything smaller than R20. And then Dale said, okay, let's, whatever you call clustering, let's not make anything smaller than R20. So then what's the contention?
We don't know that there is one at this point. It sounded like some agreement there to me. But I think that the point is that, if the developer's really going to develop in a way that keeps the lot sizes consistent with the zone that it will have, clustering, in a sense, might be okay because it yields more open space. I gather that's what Councilman Wilder was suggesting. I did hear the developer, however, say maybe it all should be left till the planning commission and not addressed in the annexation agreement. So that might be the point of contention, I'm not sure.
Can we give guidance in an annexation agreement as opposed to a hard and fast rule? And give you an example. So let's say we put the whole thing together, and goal number, 1 is usable open space, or goal number 1 is the intersection, whatever it is. Now we configure this thing, but now it's like, oh, well, it's 40 lots, but we can't make this work unless 5 of them are 17.5.
Right.
And if we put it in there that everything has to be R20, and we just can't make it work that way,
Right.
does the whole plan not work? So can we give guidance to say that, again, kind of like the open space, put it on planning and zoning and say our goal is to have 40 lots as close to possible, is nothing getting underneath R20. But does that go in the annexation agreement, or is that a different communication?
That's probably a different communication. I'm not sure that would go in the annexation agreement. I guess you could draft something kind of along the lines that we're about to cover on the roads. Sort of the developer and the town will work cooperatively toward some result that is more of a goal, but at this juncture is really out of anyone's control. I guess you could maybe draft something along those lines. I don't know what teeth there would be to that kind of provision. And so aren't you just better just to simply say, let the planning commission decide it through the development review process? That'd be my only thought.
I think, Dale, I don't want to speak for you, I think I understand Dale's concern, and it'd be one of mine too, is that we think we have a meeting of the minds, and let's say we don't put it in here, it's not an annexation agreement.
Right.
And all of a sudden we come back and everything's on a postage note. It's like, well, this isn't the vision for the community.
Right.
And, all of a sudden, well, there's nothing usable, and everything's on a postage note. I'm not saying that would happen, I'm just saying that that's the concern would be.
And 3 out of the 5 planning and zoning commission are new at that time. That's the only reason for such discussion is there something we feel strongly about now that we don't want to take the chance that the planning and zoning commission completely change.
But the flip side is we want to make it so stringent and so inflexible that they don't have the flexibility to spend the time to make it the best it can be. You know what I mean? Like the example with the 17.5s. Like maybe that's really the best. I'm yelling, but my mic's not on. Sorry. I turned it off to cough. Mr. Hill?
As Marty Hackett shared and I've shared, right now, we have a layout, nothing's under 20,000 square feet. We don't know what the final road layout is going to be right now. And I feel very confident we'll still be able to maintain that, but it's just like, maybe you were the one that said, maybe one is 18.5 instead of 20,000 or something. So I think the point you were making is that the intent is there. We are offering that up before we ever heard anything on these comments, because that's the way we had our plan laid out. I'm just concerned that these things, most of these things that have been passed on from the planning commission are do anyway things. It's not that they come up with some new thought. They've just expanded on it, just like with the language that Mr. McCarron recently shared about the water and the sewer and a 20% excess capacity. And if you ask the Public Works Director, or probably Steve, they would tell you, I mean, that's just standard design. But we don't have an issue with those things. They just add some unnecessary language, but we're going to do it anyway. And I think as you go through the balance of Mr. McCarron's comments there, I think you'll see that that's what we've stated. Most all of these things that are in there, I think we've responded, you know, they're standard. We don't have any issues with them. The issue on clustering is an important one, and I don't think in this particular project that there's a downside for the town. Because how many acres do we have total, Jim?
25 plus 8 plus 22, so
So we have 51,
50 plus acres.
yeah, 50-some acres with R20 zoning. I mean, we'd really have to work hard to create something undesirable.
Maybe it's, what if it's average, Dale?
Pardon me?
What if the 20,000, which gives some flexibility to change one if we need to get a road, or, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know that, I could be pulling this all out of left field, that if one of these lots drops to 18.5, all of a sudden it affects the intersection, and now we have a zigzag.
Right, that's a good question. If it's R20, and what if something needs to be 19 for a road? I don't know.
But what if the language said average?
I don't know how
Is
that
that-
works with zoning. When we zone things, R20, R40, I don't know whether we can say on average or not. I don't know.
Well, in the annexation agreement, I gather you could. I think you could.
Like, not to drop below a certain number, but then average of the 40 has to be above 20, like, or at least 20,000, something like that. I don't know if those things are legal. I'm just trying to not take away flexibility that would give us the ability to do the best we can.
But wouldn't that be, and this is my first time going through all this, so I might be off here, wouldn't that be handled with the concept plan when they came for the finalized? If they came to planning and zoning and said, look, we got 39 houses at the R20, we've got this last house that we're at like 19.5 on. If we do an average of it, then potentially you could be looking at small, very, very, very varied sized lots right next to each other.
Well, I think you could address that. We might be overthinking this. You probably could address it by saying, can't be below 17,000, you know, so you don't have one that's 100,000 and a whole bunch of them that are 10, right? So we're probably overthinking it. But I think what you're saying, it's what I agree to do. I'm just trying to draw everybody in, is that would be handled rather than us putting everything has to be this size box. Is give some guidance, then let it go to planning and zoning.
Right, I think the zoning is different in different areas. Aren't in the lower area where they are 15?
Yeah, we have, actually, the underlying zoning, and part of it is R15.
Okay.
But we're not designing for anything for R15.
So when you say R20 where it's R20, but you're keeping the R15s, R15. That's the plan, is to keep R15 at R15?
No, we're designing everything for R20. I think if you look at the drawings that we've given you, that's what we have. Jim just put that in my ear to remind me that we had the R15.
Oh.
But, yeah, I mean, we've not designed for R15.
I think somebody correct me if I'm wrong, Dale, that was the if not annexed? it was this portion was R15, and this was R20, and then this one was real big off conveyances.
To cluster, you do uniform lots.
Yeah, and so if we make it all one parcel, you were designing it all as like an R20 community.
That's correct.
Okay. We okay to move on from there?
Well, I guess we have to make sure we
Yeah,
get Mr. McCarron in the right direction here, so I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Probably have
Have him
enough
stealing the show.
to work off of, I guess. The only other issue was on the road improvement issues. And these would be 8.1 and 8.2, which basically say the same thing. Essentially, the petitioner made a couple points. They wish to emphasize, of course, that it has no control over what the SHA will do. I agree with that. I don't think the language that I suggested suggests that the developer will be guaranteeing any result. So I guess I'm not sure, other than in general terms, having that concern, I'm not sure why the language I suggested gives them that concern.
Mr. McCarron, my
sure.
apologies. Where are you now?
I'm sorry, 8.1 and 8.2.
Did we jump over 5, 6? I guess that's still part of the homeowners association.
It's the same point
Got it,
earlier
okay.
on HOA.
And I could ask this, pardon me, I should know this.
Sure.
We jumped from 5, 6, 5, 7 to 8. And then we go 8, 1, 8, 2, and then we jump to 10. I lost track of why we're skipping numbers.
These are the only sections of the annexation agreement that I had drafted specifically in response to your comments.
Got it, thank you.
Last time. The rest, I would say, in between is boilerplate.
Okay.
So,
I'm writing notes and
no
I'm
worries.
make sure I'm keeping up.
So, let's see, yeah, they have concern about the way the language is put about the town shall attend meetings. They want to say shall be invited to attend, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. In effect, I think the developer would say that the language I drafted, they found too cumbersome or detailed or in their words, confusing. I agree it's detailed. I don't necessarily agree that it's confusing. But essentially, the developer's response was to say that, or propose that there simply be one simple provision that says words to the effect that the developer and the town will work cooperatively with the SHA and other state and federal agencies to achieve the design approval for aligning the intersection with Maple Grove, or words to that effect, basically. You know, I don't myself have any problem with doing some wordsmithing on this. I'm always open to that. The question simply is substantively whether you want it to be any less detailed than we were in our discussions the last time, and as I think I tried to put into the language here about the very specific design that you're hopeful or contractually would require the developer to advocate for, along with the town. So that really is at the heart of, I think, the disagreement, if there is one. I'm not sure there's a huge disagreement here, but disagreement over the language at least. And I also tried in section 8.2 to say, okay, what happens if all our hopes and our dreams aren't approved by the SHA? What is the alternate design? Well, we don't know specifically. We might well have some notion as to what result we want to achieve. And so anyway, that's the fundamental issue on this sort of last point of contention. How specific do you want the language to be about the road improvement goals that you want the developer and we as the town to advocate together to the SHA?
We don't have a contention there, it's just wordsmithing.
Okay.
I think we're all on the same page, and I think probably have to trust the attorneys to wordsmith it in a manner, I don't know if we can collectively wordsmith it now.
No.
I mean, what we want a seat at the table. We want us to all work cooperatively to fix that intersection if it can be fixed, but we can't require them to do something if it's impossible.
Yeah, I think everybody understands that, for sure. That's out of our hands. The SHA is ultimately gonna take
Yeah.
what the design's gonna be.
But if it can be done, then,
But I think we do have to decide how we want this worded. I don't think I think all of us would love to see a four-way stop coming out onto Maple Grove. That's what we'd love to see. SHA could say, no, deny, can't do that. I think we would all might be a little concerned if we do right in, right out only on Maple Grove, that puts a burden on Maple Grove. So we've got to decide how we want to say all this.
you mean Charmel?
I mean, Charmel.
Charmel.
Right in, right out would take a burden off of Charmel. Because then people
The
need to
residents
go to the
might
hill
not
and turn
agree
left.
with that there. The people who live on Charmel
Oh,
might not
but
agree
they
with it.
wanna
'Cause
make a left.
the ones who like to come out and make a left will now have to find a new route if they need to go
They'll
north.
have to go through the neighborhood. It would be just like Halley.
The Frothingham Mill is right in, right? Yeah, we can't go out it, so we have to go down through Halley to get out,
Yeah.
to make a left-hand turn onto 30.
I don't think it's something we can decide here tonight, because it's gonna be an SHA thing anyway.
Right, but we have to decide how we want it worded in the annexation agreement.
I don't
Now,
know
we
if
do
I
say we
understand.
want to table, and I do like this comment that Mr. McCarron made here that, or what's in this, an agreement. Road improvements as set forth in paragraph 1 above, as confirmed after reasonably necessary study by an independent traffic engineer to be jointly retained by the developer and the town. So if somebody says, you can't do a four-way stop, we have the right to go get an independent analysis to say, yes, I can. And I'm not explaining that correctly, but
I know what you mean. I think that's fair. I don't,
What'd you say, Dale?
I think ideally, we would all love to see that four-way intersection.
You do.
Because what we would want to avoid is putting too much burden on Maple Grove, Charmel, right in, right out. Or maybe a right in, right out somewhere else. It might be better than that, but. Okay, I think we can come up with some language here.
Yeah, I mean, if it's
Personally,
just
I mean,
wordsmithing.
I think I'm doing all the
then
talking, but.
perhaps Mr. Hill's counsel can redline what I have and show us, or me, how differently they want it worded.
Yeah.
And I can make the determination whether that does substantive change to what I've written, or whether it's just wordsmithing and put a better way or a different way.
isn't this all at the end of the day, though, is what we're asking for is their word somewhat in a contract here, that they're gonna guarantee is that they'll work cooperatively with us to try to
Sure.
get this done.
Yeah.
All the rest of the stuff and naming roads right in, right out, it's all, we can't control it anyway, it's gonna be what it's gonna be when state highway weighs in. You know what I mean? Like, we could say, okay, our second preference is right in, right out or something. Like, once, I use Charmel and I make a left there. Eventually, that's gonna be right in, right out. Cause it's,
If the town of Manchester decides,
I think state highway could probably decide.
they can just come do that.
Yeah.
We talked about that at our last meeting. I thought that fell on us because it's a county road. Or a state road, not a county road, I'm sorry. The in would not be us, the out could be us, wasn't that what we said?
I don't recall exactly.
Either way, it kinda doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter for purposes of this. I mean, we can get the answer about how much control we would have to stop state highway from making lefts there later. It doesn't really have anything to do with this, so.
I think we can come up with something. With your recommendations, we can come up with something.
Okay,
Do you have the direction you need from us?
I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, the only point I don't remember where we landed was the clustering piece, what you were gonna put in.
I'm sorry.
The clustering piece is the only part I don't recall exactly what we decided, how we're gonna go
Yeah,
forward with
no,
that part.
that was the only
Leaving-
one that I'm still a little bit unsure. I think that the overall sense I got was that it's not necessarily that the agreement have a per se, no clustering rule in it, but rather that the agreement might say, you can cluster, but have some upfront limitation, subject maybe to change by the town council. if in the development process, it gets really impossible to meet this, but some limitation, I guess, as to, or a floor, if you will, as to how low you can go in the clustering in terms of your lot sizes. That's what I kind of heard was maybe the consensus or the direction to lead to consensus, maybe.
Or, I would love to hear from my colleagues, is it leaving it up to planning and zoning enough?
Or you could just simply say, hey, it's covered by the ordinance, leave it up to the planning and zoning at the time of development review.
You want to take a crack at it and send it out?
Yeah.
We discuss, let's,
Yep.
in interest of moving on.
Yep.
Let's do that. All right.
Yeah, I wish my colleagues would have spoken up this evening.
Questions, comments from the community? Mr. Pyatt, you had signed in, is this? Yeah. You didn't have a different item you want to bring up? No. Clark Schaefer signed in, but he's already gone. I won't call you out by name since you're not on camera. Did anybody else want to speak? No? All right. Just want to provide the opportunity. All right, we'll go into, I'll say it real slow and give Councilwoman Smith a chance to get back. I don't have anything. Nothing, okay. Okay, Councilwoman Miller,
Nothing to report.
Councilman Pacelli.
Just to reiterate, the former MAMA is now the North Carroll Business Alliance. I attended last month's meeting. I thought the organization is off to a heck of a good start. They seem to be well organized and very hopeful to move forward. The next meeting will be this Thursday, April 15th, 12:30 to 2 at Dutch Corner.
Councilwoman Howe.
I have nothing to report. The meeting last night was canceled. However, Bill Skinner has been a longtime volunteer. Nothing bad. Anyway, his sister passed away a few weeks ago, so we would like to send out condolences to him. So if anybody knows him. So, but that's all I have to report.
Okay, Councilman Walder.
Planning and Zoning Commission did not meet last week, but we are scheduled to have a brief meeting next Tuesday.
What's on the agenda for that next week?
It was wastewater certification.
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, me too. Michelle's gonna kill me when I get home.
Is it different from usual?
Yes, it's
No,
not.
okay.
It's none of the big plans coming down. It's not Equine Meadows or.
Yeah. That's why I was asking if it was that one. Trent, it's good to see you back in person.
It is. It's very nice. And I have so much to report, actually. So I know you mentioned the Charlotte B. Colette scholarship. Man, that was so long ago now. It's been 2 hours. So, yeah. The way our school handles scholarships often is they will not post announcements often on just 1 or 2 scholarships. They'll often send them out in mass bunches onto this one website that the school has been using for a few years now. And I was making sure it is in there, so people should be able to see it, and they have been notifying students whenever new scholarships are posted. So hopefully you should be getting some in soon.
Okay.
As for academics, the community college is holding an open house from 6 to 8 on Thursday. Dual enrollment classes, if anyone's listening, very beneficial, especially if they carry over. There's a 2-part accounting webinar that started yesterday, and the second part is on the 26th that students have registered for. Got to get close to the microphone. AP review sessions are underway, and the test will be here in 2 short weeks. So we'll see about that. As for extracurriculars, the Carroll County Government Business/Employment Resource Center is beginning a summer youth employment program for 6 weeks to educate youth on the working world through hands-on experience. The golf team has been doing really well. They have a 6-1 record, and one of those wins came last Thursday. The cross-country team has also been doing extremely well, with the boys team placing first in their most recent meet, beating out South Carroll, Winters Mill, and FSK. I had been talking to Miss Paget, the athletics director, about any difficulties concerning the COVID-19 pandemic, and besides quarantines for small little areas, they haven't had any major interruptions, so that's always nice to hear. Because at this point, I think around 75% of the county is back in school. So for our school, that's about 1,000 kids. So we got a lot there. So while the hallways are a little breaching of 6 feet, I have not seen a single student wearing their mask incorrectly or not wearing it at all. So that has been a nice thing that I've seen. And spring sports will be beginning on Saturday. I know the schedule got a little skewed as students got back to school kind of earlier this calendar year. So that season is beginning on the 17th. As for the community, because our class of 2021 is not holding a school-sponsored prom, many parents in the community have been working together to follow COVID-19 guidelines to kind of create as close of an experience to that as they can. There will, however, be a graduation at the Ag Center, which is better than last year. The fourth quarter began yesterday, so again into those last 45 days. The class of 2021 senior panoramic picture is being put together. They've had one for every year. I think they even have some of the ones from North Carroll High School in the main entrance area, so that's nice to see. The senior class is holding a group trivia night to try to get some events together on the 21st. Registration ends on Friday. For the main group of students, there's 44 days left, 32 for the seniors. And one thing, 44 days. 44 days for the students and 32 for the seniors. So next meeting I have a concert, so I'll have to send in a report for that. And also, before I come in for my last one in June, that's crazy because it's my senior year, I wanted to actually engage in some group discussion on what I should do about finding some people who might be an applicable replacement so you can get a good person, because I know you're going to miss me so dearly.
We are.
Trent, we are not going to be able to find anyone to fill that seat the way that you do.
Well, then let me help find someone. I was thinking
Okay.
talking to some of the leaders in the school to find a rising sophomore, because I think to get someone who's just coming new to the school might be a little difficult, but you want them young enough to be able to go through for a few years. So what are some qualities you guys think are important for this position?
Clone yourself and we'll take that person.
Here, let me get like a hair. I think I dropped one on
That's
the
the
desk.
qualification.
Typically, Trent, we've looked for, in terms of years, we've looked for juniors.
Okay.
And that's not a hard and fast rule. If there's a great senior, you know, that's really interested and wants to do it, I think we do it. The junior thing gives folks 2 years to do it. They typically then they start being able to drive, so they're able to get here more often too. So that's one of them. I mean, certainly somebody that's interested in public service, maybe potentially running for office. But we've had the whole gamut, and they've all been pretty good. We've had shy people. We've had you for a little bit. So if you can find somebody else with a good sense of humor, that'd be great.
I'll write that
These
down.
meetings are boring enough.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm having the time of my life. That is all I have to report.
Any questions for Trent?
I believe it is June 6th. It might be the 3rd. I'll check that right
Graduation's
now.
June 3rd.
Oh my goodness, you have the countdown, but you don't know what day graduation is, Trent?
I was
am shocked
close.
By that.
Get yourself together, Clint.
Senior awards June 2nd. Put that in your calendar, Trent.
Oh, it is. I
Okay.
not on here.
Anything else for this group? All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I know it's already 9:30, but we need to talk for a little bit. We'll be as quick as we can, then talk about
I will make a motion we adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second it.
Motion second, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, good night.